What's up, guys? So do we have any scientific research telling us what are the benefits of practicing foresight methods such as scenario planning for corporate organizations? Actually, we do. Some very good scientific research has been published on the benefits of foresight. There is not a lot. Most of articles and books about foresight are either case studies which are not generalizable or methodological guidelines, but there is some. So in this video, I want to share with you what I think is the best science we have accumulated so far in the past few decades on the benefits of foresight for corporate organizations and for the decision makers inside them. I will share with you 5 best articles starting from the oldest one to the most recent one. And by the way, let me say that some of the most recent research about this topic really shows amazing results. So do stay tuned until the end of the video to find out more about this. And this is especially the case if in your profession you are teaching foresight or you're consulting about foresight or you're planning to do so, because this stuff will be really useful for you to convince your audience that foresight is useful for corporate organizations, be it an audience of MBA students, a corporate CEO, or else. So let's jump right into this topic. The first article I want to share with you was written by Thomas Chermak and Kim Nimon, and it was published in the journal Human Resources Development Quarterly in 2008. This article is about the effects of scenario planning, which is one of the major foresight methods, on decision-making styles. And by the way, Thomas Chermak has co-authored a series of excellent articles about this topic. I'm just sharing the first one of them with you for limits of time. So in short, Chermak and Nimon looked at a technological firm in the United States practicing scenario planning, and they also looked at a control group who did not practice scenario planning from the same firm. And what they found is that those who did practice scenario planning in the scenario planning group had a significant shift in their decision-making styles as compared to those who did not practice scenario planning in the control group. Now, more specifically, scenario planning participants relied more on their intuitive decision-making style and less on their rational decision-making style. Which is a good thing because the rational decision-making style tends to assume that all available information about the business environment is accurate and reliable, and that one single optimal solution about strategic problems does exist, which is often not the case in many industries today. Executives oftentimes overly use their rational decision-making style. And by the way, this study was also replicated in another firm and published in 2016 in the Journal of Future Studies with roughly the same results. So we have very strong findings here that foresight can help the mindset of decision makers to shift from rational to intuitive style. You can check other articles by Thomas J. Chermak on this topic. Alright, so the second article I want to share with you is very similar to the first. It's also on the benefits of scenario planning on decision-making mindsets. It was written by Shardul Parnis and colleagues, and it was published in Strategic Management Journal in 2015. Now, these researchers looked at the US Transportation Department before and after having practiced scenario planning about the futures of transportation. And I guess there are many takeaways from this article, but perhaps the most important takeaway is that these researchers found that after having evaluated multiple future scenarios, participants were more flexible in their investment choices than before scenario planning. Now, this means that scenario planning made these subjects consider more options about the business environment that they had not considered before the scenario planning intervention, which is a good thing. It made them less sure but more mentally flexible. So we have more evidence that foresight can help the mindset of decision makers. Now, from the third paper that I'm going to share with you onwards, I want to shift the focus from the benefits of foresight on decision-making mindsets to the benefits of foresight on organizations as a whole. In fact, the third paper I want to share with you is about the effects of corporate foresight on firm performance. It was written by Rohrbeck and Kuhn, and it was published in the journal Technological Forecasting and Social Change in 2018. So in this paper, the researchers looked at multinational organizations in Europe in 2008. They tracked those organizations until 2015, and they found that those firms that were more vigilant, defined as those firms that practiced the right foresight technique commensurate to the level of volatility and uncertainty of the business environment around them, those firms were 33% more profitable and had a 200% higher market capitalization in 2015 than those firms that were not vigilant. So this is a highly cited and also rather straightforward paper, so I'm not going to comment it any further. Suffice it to say that this paper shows that using the right foresight technique can help the bottom line of corporate organizations. Alright, so the fourth paper I want to share with you, and also, by the way, my favorite one so far, was also written by Shardul Padnis, this time co-authored with Nitin Goenka, and it was published in the journal Production and Operation Management in 2021. So this paper looks at the benefits of more than one organization practicing foresight together. So what these researchers did is an experiment with MBA students who simulated being either buyer organizations, that is retailers, or supplier organizations, that is manufacturers, in the same industry. And what they found is quite impressive. They found that first, if buyer and supplier organizations jointly practiced scenario planning, they identified new driving forces in the business environment that they would not have otherwise identified if they had practiced scenario planning separately. Now, this means that if buyer and supplier organizations jointly practice scenario planning, their input in the scenario planning practice is richer. Their practice of scenario planning improves. Quite intuitive. But most importantly, second, they also found that if buyer and supplier organizations practice scenario planning together, they see variables that they would have separately considered beyond their control, now under their control. Now, this is really important because it shows that if different stakeholders in the same industry jointly practice scenario planning, their agency to solve industry-level problems actually increases. Alright, so the last paper I'm going to share with you is about the effects of scenario planning on firms' entrepreneurial orientation. It was written by Bualeb and Tapinos, and it was published also in the journal Technological Forecasting and Social Change, this time very recently in 2023. So in this paper, the researchers asked an impressive group of 133 healthcare professionals in France about their practice of scenario planning. And what they found is that the extent to which these companies were proficient at scenario planning was associated with two key factors of entrepreneurial orientation of the companies as a whole, and that is risk-taking and proactiveness. Now, this is also really good because these traits make companies more agile, more quick to adapt, and prone to think of new solutions, which are really important today in many industries. So we also have evidence that foresight can help with that. Alright, I really hope this was helpful. To wrap up, we seem to have some evidence that practicing foresight, and in particular practicing scenario planning, which is the most widely studied foresight method, has some benefits on decision makers and on corporate organizations as a whole. But it's important to remember that these are just a few studies and that we need many more studies to conclusively claim that foresight has these and other benefits on our corporate organizations. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye!